identifies major projects that we have, or they're both maintenance and construction. These happen to be maintenance projects. And MnDOT doesn't normally fund this level of project until after they've funded the more important safety projects around the state. And then sometime, and acknowledging that the state fiscal year is July to June, they have from last year of July, 2018, starts their 2019 budget. So they go throughout the year, and then normally about April or early May, they have additional funds that weren't used. They have projects that were under bid or not bid, or and they could have extra funds left over so that they can go deeper into their list of CIP projects for the year. Well, we were kind of waiting for some notice in April and then May, and we pretty much gave up on it because now it's June. And we got a phone call that said, if in fact we had some money left over, would the city of Marshall be ready to participate with our 70-30 funding for this crack seal and maintenance? And I said, yes, we've been kind of waiting for it. I know it's kind of short term, but we can get quotations for it. So we did that, and that was, we called them back, and Dean Kudrin had indicated that, you know, we have upgraded our next year's crack seal and fill too, and seal, that we'd like to have it again next year. So I mentioned that to him. He said, well, Glenn, how much would you like? And I said, well, you know, it's one of those questions that kind of takes you back a little bit. And I said, well, just let me check. And in our CIP, we had another $50,000 figured for it. And so called him back, and they said, well, we'd like to have up to $50,000 more. And he said, that'd be doable. And so he said, I'll put together the grant agreement to send to you for, instead of going to maximum of $50,000, we'll go to a maximum of $100,000. And then I did ask specifically, we'd like to use that for the seal coating for the main roadway and parking lots out front. And he said that would be all right too. He had to double check on that, but that would be okay. So if you could just bring up the area that we were talking about, that was the addition. The green that you see on there is the additional work that could be done with that money. So this grant agreement includes both the crack seal for the runways, taxiways, and airport by the T hangars, and then the extra was for that whole green area. So even though it was not in the budget, I did talk with both Sharon and Annette concerning the possibilities of how that could be funded with this year's budgeted amounts, and they indicated that it could be done because we are not doing, for instance, the front-end loader this year. So the money is kind of set aside for that, and we're recommending the approval of utilizing $70,000 of state grant funding.
Thank you, Glenn. Questions for Glenn?
Glenn, out of that, do you think you're going to get all that green area that you had sealed, or are we just going to do what we can?
No, we know that it is, and that's why in the approval of the item, it shows the actual bid amount, and then if for some reason it overran a little bit, we said up to, not to exceed 50,000 for that project. I think the price was about 47,000 or something.
Any other questions? If not, you have the recommendation. Thank you, Glenn.
I move approval.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion passes. Move then to the next agenda item number 4. This is the crack, fill, and seal runways at Southwest. This is the award of the proposal. Anything more to add on this?
No.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Russ. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. That motion passes. And agenda item number 5, this is the chip sealing, the award of the proposal. Once again, Glenn, anything to add?
No.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. The motion passes. Move then to agenda item number 6 is the consent agenda. We only have 2 items on the consent agenda this evening. Bring those up on the screen. And those items would include consider the approval of the non-union employee wage schedule for 2020, 2021, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purpose of separate discussion?
Number 7, please.
Okay, 7's been removed. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda, which is number 8.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. The motion passes. Move then to agenda item number 7. Russ?
Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, I would just ask for your respect and pardon my with me. There are a couple of things on this. First of all, it's a 2020 and 2021 agreement, which I don't have a problem with the year. But I think that Councilman Bearcoller, in his absence, as I think in past meetings, has said something about he'd like to see further step increases, whether it's possible in this one or not. So that's a point of discussion that I think I'd like to have this tabled. The other point is that if you look at your wage schedule, and I've asked the Personnel Committee to take a look at this, and I'm going to bring it up at a public meeting. We have underneath the points, with the city administrator being the highest, and it goes down, Director of Public Works, City Engineer next, Director of Community Services, and Director of Public Safety. If you look at the Director of Community Services, those points are considerably lower than the Director of Public Safety. I don't know if anybody has ever addressed that, but if you look at the rest of the points, everything goes downhill. So maybe the personnel could review this prior to the adoption of this agreement.
So I see Sheila Dubs, HR Director, is standing up, but let me just make a couple of comments on that, Russ. I think the points that you're bringing up are valid points, but they're relevant to the classification of the positions. This would be dealing with the cost of living adjustments. So I agree the points that we've talked about as far as looking at the step increases and the number and the distribution between the step increases. That's an important topic. Looking at the proper point evaluation for the position descriptions for the classification. That's important. But both of those are kind of unrelated to the cost of living adjustment. And that's the action tonight. So I respect what you're saying. You're bringing up good points, but and I think the Personnel Committee should discuss both of those.
All right, thank you.
I don't know, Sheila, you were standing up. I hate it. I'm sorry if if you wanted to say something, you certainly could. But so with that, what is the council's wishes?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. Move then to agenda item number 9 with the presentation of the 2018 year-end audit for the city of Marshall. Earlier this evening, the council met in special session and had a lengthy presentation on the audit, and we will have more of a summary type presentation in this meeting. But to introduce this, I'll call on Finance Director Annette Storm.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have Kyle Myers and Tom Olinger here with Abdo Eichen Myers to present to the 2018 audit, and I believe Kyle will be the one presenting.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Annette. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. As Mayor mentioned, we did have a lengthy discussion on the city's finances and results of the audit in the meeting prior here. We did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Some of the other highlights were that the city's net position increased by about $5 million during the year compared to an increase of about $3.6 million in 2017. Of that $5 million, capital grants was a $5.4 million amount. So typically capital grants go right to the bottom line. So that's a lot of what your increase in net position consisted of. Also, the enterprise funds contributed $650,000 to the net position of the city, and that's after a $300,000 transfer to the city's general fund to fund those operations. As far as individual funds, the general fund had a healthy 50% reserve level. That's in conjunction with the city's fund balance policy of 50%. Has some assignments above that of about $1.5 million, above the $6.1 million of unassigned. And also the enterprise funds provided positive cash flows, and the capital reserves there have been increasing over the last several years, so that's a good sign. Couple other things that were noted, the city did make improvements. The city had one finding last year on material audit adjustments, and there were none noted during the current year. So that finding went away, and we discussed another finding that there could be some steps taken to eliminate that finding as well. I'll also point out that the number of journal entries in the last 3 years have almost been cut in half over each of the last 3 years, from over 70 to about 30-something to about mid-teens. So it's a good improvement on the city's finance staff to do that, as well as eliminating a number of capital projects funds that have been sitting out on the city's books for 10 or so years or less, that just could be cleaned up. So the city did a great job of cleaning those funds up as well. So a lot, gives you a better idea where you're at with individual projects and funds and activities. So once you clean those old projects up. So I guess with that, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Questions? There's no questions. I believe the action here is to accept and approve the 2018 year-end audit.
I move approval of the 2018 year-end audit report.
Second. Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. The motion does pass. So just a thank you to the finance team, thank you to the administration team, and thank you to the audit team for all working together on a thorough and successful audit. And on a personal note, thank you, Kyle. I believe you're retiring from many years of service to your firm, as well as service to the city of Marshall. So thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank you too for the opportunity to serve the city. It's been a great experience for me as well, so thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 11, and then we'll come back to agenda item number 10. Agenda item number 11 is project Z70. This is the South High Street, South Whitney Street, the 100 and 200 block alley project improvement. We will consider the resolution declaring the adequacy of the petition and ordering the preparation of the report. So Len Olson, Director of Public Works, and the engineer, will present this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, we have a variety of members from that, adjacent to that improvement project here. There were signatories to the request, and I thought that maybe just a procedural thing for the people that came. This initiates the project, and now we'll go through a physical design, even though we do have conceptual designs of storm sewer coming down, the alley improvements put together, the kind of the section. We intend to have the petitions for a concrete alley. And the important thing here is we can't deviate from what the petition said. So we will have the prices of the storm sewer line separate from and in addition to the alley, if that's what goes forward. Now, when the prices come out, there still can be a discussion as, no, we'd rather just do the alley, or we'd rather just do the storm sewer, rather than both combined together. So now this will initiate the feasibility report. We know it's going to be feasible, but we have to do that process for a special assessment. So a feasibility report, and then the design and cost to do it. And then we'll be calling, all of these will be public meetings at the council. And most likely, there'll be multiple actions taken at each meeting. So for instance, at the next meeting, hopefully we can accept the feasibility report, call for plans and specs, approve plans and specs, and then that will determine whether or not we go forward. Okay? So it's not a must-do at this point in time. This is just a request to develop the project, say that it's feasible, come back with a estimated cost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glenn, is there any chance with the way that it was petitioned, if the projection and/or the bids come in, or is it possible with the plans, could they still bid concrete and blacktop as two options? It has to go as concrete because of how it was petitioned? Okay.
Now, we can certainly include an estimated cost if it was blacktop, but then we'd have to do the petition over again.
But that's definitely possible. They could do the petition in a day if they had to, if
Sure.
it comes out that it's, because I'm hoping they were aware that that's what they were doing. We're going through in my alley the same process, and we amended the petition to read both blacktop and concrete, just in case. Concrete would obviously be the preferable, but it may or may not be cost prohibitive. So we just I want to make sure that you have that option if that's what you desire.
The issue will be is when you make an inverted crown, it's
Right.
difficult to do that with asphalt and get it compacted properly. So that's the difficulty of that. The best, of course, if you're going to do an inverted alley in a 16-foot width, it would be difficult to do that with asphalt. So we're certainly willing to work with you what you want in the end, but I think with the narrowing of the, it's not like it's 20 or 24 feet. It's 16 feet wide, and I think we just see what happens. For sure, I'm going to recommend right away that for sure we need that stormwater the storm sewer project. That was designed way back 15 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, well, we had a pipe stub out, and it was, that would go up all the way to this same location. So, and at the time, it wasn't feasible money-wise, at least for the residents. But then it was drier. We've just been having regular wet conditions that the lawns aren't absorbing the rainfall, and everything is running downhill, and everyone contributes to it. So if you're on the hill, even though you don't get wet, you contribute to the problem, and that's the discussion that we'll have when we come out with potential assessments.
Other questions?
And
Russ?
with all the hoops they have to go through, the timing, I mean, next week, we're looking at July 1. Is there enough time for them to do, or for us to do all the work and have this project completed before the snow flies?
It may not be. So we will go and we'll see how it progresses, and at the latest, it would be next spring. At the earliest, it would be late fall.
Depending on how fast everybody responds
Yeah.
and that type of thing, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they'd rather have it done sooner than later,
Yeah.
because you don't want to go through another spring like you did this past year.
Any other questions? Not, I would entertain a motion on the resolution declaring the adequacy of the petition.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Steve, seconded by Russ. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting, and that motion passes. So, the neighbors that are here, questions, you're open to any questions or updates or suggestions.
Yep.
Contact
Anytime
Glenn's
any of them
office.
would want to come in. It was a really good turnout for the petition. Over 70% names were on the petition. And I understand that just gets it started, doesn't commit you to anything at this time, but it starts the process.
Thank you. Yes.
One question, we had done the petition,
Yep.
so I think there would have been time to maybe get this done this year, but then we were told that we didn't do the petition right.
You want to address that, Dennis?
And that was the signature issue. I don't want to get in the middle of a husband and wife fight where the husband signs, but the wife is a co-owner and she doesn't agree to it. So, well, I think if you're joint owners, both had to sign. So that's on me to kick it back. We got both. If it's husband and wife jointly own it, both husband and wife required to sign.
Understand.
Yeah.
We were not told that.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate that delayed things.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move then to, if there's no other questions, we'll move then to agenda item number 10. This would be to consider the approval of the Red Baron Arena and Expo parking lot addition. I'll call on
Thank you, Paul.
Scott Vandermillen, Community Services Director. Scott?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me first introduce a few folks that I'm going to, at some point during this discussion, defer to in terms of answering hopefully specific questions in regards to this project. Obviously, I'll defer to Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works, when it relates to the logistics of the project. Maha has some leadership here this evening. At some point towards the end of our discussion, I'll introduce Josh Johnson from Maha, who will speak to the outdoor rink portion of the project. And then Preston Stensrud, our park superintendent, when you have questions specific to the arena, once the project gets underway, landscaping, utilities from the arena as it relates to the outdoor rink, so on and so forth. So with that, let me just take you through a brief timeline. I know for you council members, this is nothing new. This is the fourth summer that the arena has been opened, and it's no secret in this room or in the community the challenges that we've had with parking for large events, such as our home show, even individual hockey tournaments, let alone weekend hockey tournaments, craft shows, joint events that go on at the arena and the softball complex simultaneously. So those are just to name a few. A few council meetings ago, we addressed the issue of restriping the front existing parking lot at the arena. What that restriping will do is it will force us to lose approximately 27 parking stalls, okay? So that'll take us down to just over 150, between 150 and 157, depending on how that striping project goes. And if we would relocate handicap accessible parking slots. With the project before you, that project will add an additional 106 stalls. Let me address a question that you may have for me in advance in terms of our initial discussions that began even prior to bringing this to the council work session on April 9th. We had discussed internally and met with MAHA, with City Administrator Hanson, Mayor Burns, and city staff in regards to our options of locating a parking lot on either the north end of the arena or the south end of the arena. The project before you is to be located on the south end of the arena. And for those of you that are directionally challenged in Marshall like I am, south is as you're approaching the arena coming in on Tiger Drive. So it would be the first thing that you would see there on your left as you're going past the softball diamonds, okay?
Kind of where the bus parking is now.
Exactly, exactly. So as our discussions began and our discussions continued, we talked about the positives and the negatives of north versus south, always keeping in mind our discussion with MAHA about their desire to have an outdoor rink on site at the facility, and also keeping in mind their future plans for dry land athletic training facility, which I'll let Josh speak to more later, okay? Let me just run through some general reasons why we felt south was better than north, and then I'm more than happy to answer questions. First and foremost, it gave us an opportunity to address that existing bus turnaround lane. Because in this project, we need to reconfigure that. We're going to relocate our bus parking. They will be able to still drop off at the arena, but they will park in the softball complex parking lot. And that's what buses are doing now. You would rarely see over the last 3 years of weekly or weekend hockey tournaments a bus parking in that area. Mostly due to the fact that buses like to come in, drop off, go get something to eat, fill up with gas, and park away from traffic flow. So buses felt comfortable parking in that softball parking complex once we had that area open. So it gave us an opportunity to reconfigure that, okay? It's on the south end, it's more convenient in terms of accessing the arena, in terms of complete flow of the facility. If you think about the softball complex and where that is and access to the arena, if I'm approaching the arena as a visitor, okay, on Tiger Drive, and if I see parking on the left, okay, and I've never been to the arena before, and I'll read a comment later that I took from a visitor, but if you're approaching the arena and you see parking on the left, where are you going to turn to? The left, okay? And if all of those spots are filled, and there's snowbanks in the remaining, okay, are you going to take the time to go over to the softball complex, or are you going to park illegally? I'll let you answer that question as a visitor to the arena, okay? But if the overflow went to the softball complex, people would complain in terms of the location of the parking lot, and we would hear those complaints that it was too far away. So another intention was get that parking closer to the entrance of the arena, okay? I spoke earlier just briefly about the opportunity for MAHA to have future dry land training facility expansion. So that would sit ideally, and they don't have a formal plan ready for the city at this point, but that would give them an ideal location in terms of creating that space and also adding storage space that the city desperately needs at that facility. And I can get into that discussion later, and I know Preston would be glad to speak to that issue. I met with the school district shortly after I'd met with you in work session. I met with Dion Karen, the Director of Business Services. We toured the facility, we walked through both locations, and we weighed the positives and the negatives, and I asked him to go back and meet with school district personnel, get their feedback, and get back to me. I'm going to just read kind of a summary of the email that Dion got back to me with. He met with Bruce Remy, Activities Director, Brian Jones, High School Principal, and Warren Buckholtz, Director of Facilities. In summary, they saw more negatives of the lot being on the north end. The only positive that they saw in the lot being located on the north end was overflow parking being available at their high school events, which they don't see as having an immediate need right now for. Some of the the positives of, or the negatives of being in the north. They were concerned about students parking there during the academic day and during the school year. How would that be controlled? Would that be the city's responsibility? Would that be the school district's responsibility? If you envision that north end of the high school, it's already a three-way stop coming out of the high school, coming from, and again, I'm directionally challenged, but Tiger Drive in both directions. So what we would have to do out of that parking lot, if it was located on the north end, is we would have to install a four-way stop. Now, if you can imagine how that traffic flows goes, high school kids driving exclusively during the school year, okay, and coming around that curve, okay, as you're approaching the high school, and a four-way stop trying to get out, not necessarily at 3 o'clock, because there wouldn't be a lot of events going on at the arena at 3 o'clock, but envision a high school basketball game, a high school hockey game going on at the same time, and a four-way stop at 10:30 at night trying to get people out of there. So the school felt more comfortable if we went on the south end, because we could control traffic better and there wouldn't be as much of a backup coming out of the arena. And I'll ask Glenn to speak to, and him and I met specifically on entrances and exits to the addition on the south end. Okay. Ultimately, the school district felt that they would be supportive of either way, but preferred that there would be no impact on the school district if we went on the south end. Okay. And I had one more. Oh, and I spoke to the easier user access for the softball complex overflow. If I have a 16-team softball tournament, for example, we have one on Saturday, okay? And we know that that softball complex is going to be, that parking lot's going to be full, okay? It's an easier transition if we have an existing parking lot on the south end rather than tucked behind the high school. Now, if I'm from Marshall or I've been here before, I'm going to make that effort to drive behind the arena and find that additional parking. But if I'm a first-time visitor, am I going to spend my time trying to park in the existing parking or park illegally, then have something visible to me as soon as I approach the arena? And let me read that comment quickly to you that was shared with me. I spoke with someone who was here for a youth hockey tournament this winter, and the gentleman asked me not to share his name, but his comment was specific to my question of, as you're approaching our arena, where would you prefer to have access to parking? I would much rather see the parking initially so that I know where I'm going. I'm not going to spend much time during 15 to 20 below zero weather driving around your facility to look for parking. If I see it and there's plenty of it, that eliminates all concerns for your visitors. I'm just sharing a comment that was shared with me. So with that, I would welcome questions in regards to that justification of the lot being located on the south. Let me first emphasize that, again, the project adds an additional 106 stalls. It takes us to a capacity of between 250 and 260 stalls upon completion. It is under budget, and it could be completed, and it could be completed by the time we put the second sheet of ice down in mid to late October. So with that, I welcome questions that you have or would defer to Glenn in terms of logistics of the plan, and I believe that's the updated map that Jeff Stelter provided us this afternoon.
Thank you. We'll open up for questions. Steve?
So Scott, you said we're going to, with the restriping, we'll lose how many spots?
Potentially, we could lose as many as 27.
So I would challenge that, because those, right now, those slots are so narrow. You don't really have full slots, right? I mean, does everybody agree who's been out there? You got 4 big F-250, F-150 pickup trucks. They're taking over more spots. So you're not really losing those spots. I would say we're getting to where we need to, and you're making them more amenable and friendlier spots than what they are now. So,
It's hard for Craig not to scrape up my vehicle when he parks next to mine,
I'm an
but,
excellent driver, but you're going to have to go out through your window.
but we've reviewed it with Public Works, spoken to Glenn at great length about it in terms of the restriping, the completion of it, and we feel comfortable with that number of where we're at, that it wouldn't be more than 27. It could be less, but we feel pretty good that that's a pretty accurate estimate of
we're going to make
27.
the spots a little wider and a little better.
Definitely.
That would
9.5.
be- that- If we're not going to do that, I'm voting against it. But if we do that, I'm voting for it.
Scott, one additional question. Even with this addition, and with the magnitude of some of the events that are out there, we might still be short.
Oh, absolutely.
So we will need to still utilize that softball. And with this project, and which I think the answer to this will be yes, but with this project and with the potential for the outdoor ice location, will there still be a sidewalk, a visual connection, and an easy connection between this parking lot and the softball?
Signage.
As Glenn and I have had that conversation, we believe that there would be.
Okay.
We
I
also
think that would be
added,
important.
for that issue only, we added an 8-foot sidewalk along the easterly side of this parking lot to allow foot traffic to come across and then head right up here to the sheltered area next to the building.
Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to just drill a little deeper into that, because that was my question is, so the intent is the sidewalk connect from the softball field parking lot would be right along
Right there.
Victory Drive? Okay.
And
So,
then-
I mean, in the wintertime, that's the farthest from the building. I don't mean to be critical about this, but it's frustrating because I know the difficulty of parking, so I make my wife walk with me because she won't let me drop her off by the door, God bless her. But is it possible, is there a thought about connecting the future rink into the compressor building? Is that the intent, Preston, that it's going to be refrigerated ice?
The thought would be to get the lines underneath if they do the outdoor rink.
Do we have,
That we could stub in, but we'd have to check with some refrigerant guys to make sure we have the capacity.
right. So that's my question when I look at this. So that's why that the rink is as far north as it can be, is to tie in. My thought on that is I know it might take some additional work, and I went on Google Earth, and unfortunately, or Google Maps, and the satellite view that I have is still under the arena under construction. They haven't updated their photos very well. If there's a way that we can make that connect go closer to the building and not make them go along Victory Drive, I think that would be ideal, because I share Bob's concern that, we're going to use that parking. A lot of people are going to use, even the bus drivers are going to use it. And then if the parking lot's jammed up, because people love to park double deep in the bus parking, so even if those buses park over there, at the end of the game, they're going to need to come around to load people. They're not going to make them drag their bags over to that softball piece, or if they do, we're going to want it to be as short and as maintainable as possible. If we have a winter like this last one, we're going to need a sidewalk that's easy for them to maintain. So if there's a way that we can phase this up to meet both of those needs, to give them as much courtesy as we can with the outdoor sheet, but still have good, close, convenient connect to that parking lot, I think that is really desirable.
And the buses, Craig, will still have access for drop-off and pickup. They just won't permanently park during the event in that lot.
But I really think that we need to make a good, solid effort to make pedestrian connect between those lots. I really agree with Bob. I think that is a priority. Otherwise we're gonna get picked on again that we did it, but we didn't do it right. And
Consideration is a safe crossing.
yes. Yep. So, and I mean, other than that, I mean, I fully support it. I'm glad we're doing this. It's long overdue. I know we did it as legitimately as possible, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate Maha and the other folks' efforts into this too, to work with it and to support it.
Fine.
Another couple other tweaks that were made. If you have the drawing that came out with the agenda, you can see that this island and this island were moved to match up with these. That was for maintenance activities and snow removal. On the original ones, these were offset, and we made them line up. We didn't lose any spaces to do that. The other item was the entrance. Right now, only is wide enough for the buses coming in and one lane going out. So you can see in this revision, we've widened the driveway so that you can have a right turn out, a left turn out, and a right in. So we are widening that driveway to accommodate two-way traffic going out. The stacking for this is going to stack up 2 lanes deep here. Okay, when this, everybody gets out, we want them to come to this location, get out. They can also exit here, and this entrance also has 2 lanes out, 1 lane in. So there is 2 separate and distinct exit locations for this parking lot.
An additional comment to that too, Glenn, if I could, is that if there's some way we can sign that tells people if they're not going northbound on 23, they should not turn right and head out that way. I mean, there's an awful lot of dangerous U-turns made on 23 by the college crossover because they go out the wrong exit.
Yeah, we can discuss signage and see what the best is. And that can be tweaked too after we put up what we think is right.
Sure.
And then it doesn't work exactly the way we thought. We can add additional signage.
And that's again for the new visitors. People that have been here, they don't make that mistake 3 times. They might make it twice, but I guarantee you they don't make it the 3rd time.
Another comment on the total parking is that then there is the availability of putting more parking on the north side. If in fact this doesn't satisfy the needs of the customers. And what a great problem to have is the need for more parking. So.
Just a question, I like the islands, but is there really a need for the islands there? We're trying to get as much parking in here as we can.
We talked about that. There's 2 things we can talk about. One is trying to kind of match the other parking lot, trying to have 8 trees in the parking lot and landscaping in those areas. And by doing this, it's really straight through snow removal control. So we think it's aesthetically more pleasing than just a sea of asphalt. But that's amenable.
One of the other things, John, that it does is it allows to somewhat control better the traffic flow after an event. If we take those islands out, it could be a Katy free-for-all. Yeah, so.
That's true.
Yeah, ask the question because it looks about like 16 more parking spaces.
Otherwise, it's going to be cross-country like Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No,
all it
yeah.
is.
And Russ?
I'm not opposed to the additional need, Scott. I echo what John said. I just question the need to have all those islands in there. And I've been brought up before at prior council meetings, I would like to see in the existing parking lot some of those islands removed. Because, Preston, you plow snow out there. Is it any fun to go around all the islands? No. I mean, wouldn't you rather have a straight shot? And there's been people saying that it's a sea of concrete. A sea of concrete is a lot easier to plow than around multiple islands and curbs because eventually, 5 years, 10 years, those curbs are probably going to be destroyed anyway with plows. So I know there's a need, and I really emphasize that there is a need, but there was a couple of things, one way in, one way out, and I don't like all the islands.
And the islands, just to comment back, the islands in the other parking lot are L-shaped and really difficult to work around. These are straight so that you can go straight east and west.
I understand that, Glenn, but how about if we just, even if we remove the center, if you go from right to left, you know, the second one in each of those, how many parking spaces could you add? Could you add another 5, 6 parking spaces there?
One for each island at a minimum.
At least.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, 2.
Yeah, so again, you could gain some
But-
additional space, and yet you don't have an island and everything.
Or even 4 islands and cut out.
Correct.
I'm just
Put it down the
saying
center.
Yeah,
that
I know. I always, Glenn,
getting
excuse
out
me.
is going to be a free-for-all.
I always say, you know, it's engineers, and I respect engineers, but engineers design cars, they don't have to work on them. And same way with parking lots. Engineers, architects design parking lots. They don't have to plow the snow. Ask the snow plow drivers, ask the maintenance people how they have, if they have to mow lawn, if they have to trim the trees, all this other stuff. You know, you're not going to get grass to grow on any of those islands. You're probably going to put rock or mulch or something. Every few years, you've got to replace that mulch. And like I said, 5 years down the road, those curbs are going to be chipped up and broken up, and you're going to replace curbs. I'll guarantee you that.
I think we're probably getting into a level of detail that maybe is more of a design and some philosophy and about the value of trees and the value of aesthetics as opposed to the control that the snowplow driver has on design. So I'm not sure we need to get too much in the weeds on that one. But Scott, I want to turn back to you. I think you had more to your presentation or more individuals involved.
Well, I would just, thank you, Mayor. I would just say that at this point, if you don't have any additional questions in regards to the lot project itself, as it sits by itself, then I'd like, at this time, to introduce Josh Johnson from MAHA that would speak to the outdoor rink project and their plans for that. And if you have additional questions for me, I'd be glad to answer those.
Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Scott, Mayor and Council. For those who don't know me, I'm Josh Johnson. I'm the newly elected president of MAHA as of 15, 20 days ago. So here I stand. Lucky me. So
I don't know what you did.
yeah, I know. Yeah, well, don't show up to a meeting. This is what you get, right? In that regard. But just to kind of maybe reiterate, parking has always been an issue out there. We knew that from the beginning. This does help alleviate some of that. It won't take it all away. We realize that now. But what MAHA wanted to do is, if you noticed when you came in today, we've lost our outdoor rink here at the school. We donated those boards to Ghent, the city of Ghent. So they'll be doing, it was more of an outreach for MAHA to allow them to have outdoor ice in the city of Ghent. And MAHA has traditionally supplied outdoor ice to the city and in the community. And so we're looking at this project and the excavation. It only made sense to partner. Obviously, it's a little cheaper if they have the bulldozer there for the parking lot to be able to level and bulldoze for the ice arena area as well out there. And so we were looking for approval from the city to go ahead and start with those plans. We do have some funding available currently and can do this at the same time, but we obviously would be looking for some corporate sponsorship partnerships along the way. This would be community city ice, not MAHA ice. This would be maintained by the Red Baron Arena, but with the help of MAHA. Those volunteer hours and that committee that we currently have to maintain the ice here would continue, if not expand into that. So we've always worked well with Red Baron staff out there. And would help in any way that we can. Take any questions you guys have.
Josh, where would growing up in northern Minnesota where we had nothing but outdoor ice initially, you always had to have a warming house.
Yeah.
Where would the warming house be?
We're going to try to tuck it close enough to the Red Baron that in that corner there at the entrance and exit to that, so you would be able to get your skates on inside the Red Baron Arena. And then just walk a short distance out to the ice, and then back into the Red Baron at that time.
As far as equipment for taking care of the ice, we're good with what we've got there.
What you have there, and what the plan is, in talking with Cody out there, you probably use the Zamboni when they need to change the blade out in the Zamboni. Outdoor ice is a lot harder on those blades because of the dirt and stuff you'll accumulate in that ice. And so if they were going to change a blade, they would just simply run out quick, Zamboni that ice, and then take the blades off, which is fine for outdoor ice. We don't need a groomed outdoor ice every day or anything like that. So this is fairly common when we travel the state of Minnesota. Some of the more desired arenas we go to have outdoor ice attached to their arenas. And it's almost a showcase for them. So
Josh, you mentioned the boards that were here have been donated,
Yep.
and of course, you know, so this would be new boards.
New boards,
And
yep.
the appearance would be,
Yeah, we would want to stay with the aesthetic of the Red Baron Arena. I mean, it's it's a really nice building. I mean, no matter where we travel in the state, if you say you're from Marshall, the first thing they say is, you guys have a really nice arena. It's a pretty big crown jewel. And so we would want to make sure that's aesthetically matching to that as well, and have that look of like a Hockey Day Minnesota. You know, when you approach into the Red Baron, you see the parking lot, you see a really nice outdoor arena, you know you're in hockey. You're in a hockey spot.
other questions? John and then
Any
Russ?
seating around there?
No, there would be enough room to be able to bring in, like at the fair, you see them scooting around the aluminum seating. So if we wanted to do an outdoor event, a fundraiser, or maybe do something like a Hockey Day Minnesota, we surely could do it. I would envision that we would do something around that down the road, but we could just bring that in with payloaders.
And Russ?
Josh, just for scheduling purposes, open skate for anybody plus hockey, or?
Yeah, we
What's
would
the plan?
actually, do the scheduling with the Red Baron Arena. So it would be an open skate. If Red Baron wants to do the open skate outside or continue to do it inside, they would have the option of doing that either or. It would be open to the public, so when it's not in use, just like a city park. If the shelter's not in use, go ahead and use it. But you could also then reserve it to doing things like that. We have made a verbal commitment to the city that if Maha uses that ice for official practice, like a scheduled practice, we would pay the skate or rental rates for ice that contractually we have. So, but if it's just being used by kids after practice to go out there, that's just like going out to the park.
Would it have lights?
Yes, yep. And that's another reason why doing it at the same time, because all the wiring runs underneath the parking lot. And so running those wires out there while we got the ground dug up makes more sense.
So the plan is, the plan is to refrigerate it if possible?
Hopefully, yes. The plan is, yep.
If it's not possible, do you have alternate plans? Because with Minnesota winters, you know, you can have a winter like last year.
We've operated with Mother Nature here,
Right.
you know, in the past. So there is some years, you're right, Russ, that we don't have as much outdoor ice as we would like to have, and just kind of accepted that. But our ultimate goal is to hook in to the refrigeration. You know, there is a belief that it could happen. Obviously, we want to reach out to some experts to say, we're not going to wreck anything by overloading a compressor, do damage to anything, that we have enough capacity to do so.
My last question, you made reference to the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Maha and the city would continue to maintain that outdoor facility?
That is correct, yeah. Snow removal would more than likely be done by the city, but anything that, like we do now out there, if there's a special need or a need to do something, getting it started up in the spring, you know, we have Maha members that come out and help paint the ice, help, you know, get the boards set up, and you know, we help with that. Same thing with the outdoor ice. Cody would just reach out to us saying, this week we're going to do, you know, board maintenance and getting it ready for water and ice. We would just make sure we'd have membership available there, so.
Any other questions? Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And Scott, anything more? So you have the request before you. Are there any other issues that should be considered by the council?
Is this just going to be hockey, or could they like have community service do like the curling out there, or broom ball, or?
Absolutely.
It probably wouldn't be good for curling. It wouldn't be nice enough, but it'd sure be good for adult broom ball, and that type of thing would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then you could probably do like arena rodeo in there if you wanted. I mean, right?
One thing at a time.
So with that, what are the wishes of the council?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just comment, being on the Southwest Amateur Sports Commission board and focused with Red Baron Arena and Expo and the work there, I really want to thank Maha and all the members and the board on MAHA for the really good partnership that the city has and the Southwest Amateur Sports Commission and Marsh has with MAHA. And you folks represent us very well too. So the good review that Red Baron Arena and Expo gets is a lot based on the work that you do to host the tournaments and the way that you run the organization out there. And thank you for making Marshall proud of Marshall hockey. So I just want to reach out, thank you for that. It's easy to support a group like you.
So thank you. We'll move then to agenda item number 12. This will be to consider the approval of the resolution consenting and approving to the issuance of the conduit revenue obligation by Lyon County. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor and Council, last year, United Community Action Partnership started the planning process for a new Head Start facility. And currently they have approval to proceed with that particular project. It is approximately a $3 million project. It will be located near their current UCAP offices off of Highway 23. And one of the requests by UCAP was if the city could issue conduit bonds. We do believe this to be an economic development project in terms of meeting a need of our population, in terms of the children that they'll serve. But in addition, there'll be additional employment and staff hired as part of this particular project. So we did give indication back to UCAP in 2018 that we would have interest in issuing a conduit bond. And we had plans as we got into 2019 to formalize that with approvals and process here at the council meeting. In discussing the conduit bonding with our bond counsel at Kennedy and Graven, we discovered that to be considered as an issuer, you need to be defined as a small issuer, which is an IRS definition. And to be a small issuer, you cannot issue more than $10 million in a calendar year. We preliminarily thought we were still in good standing. We did have a City Hall project that we anticipate sometime later this year. However, we then found out in April that the Public Facilities Authority loan for wastewater was also counted towards that $10 million limit. And because we did not want to put either of those projects at risk, what Springstead and Kennedy and Graven suggested is that the county could issue this conduit bond. The conduit bond allows UCAP to obtain financing at a lower interest rate. So it's important for them to go through this process, and they have to use a government entity to do that. The county was acceptable to that. They actually discussed this at their June 18th county board meeting and adopted a resolution to set a public hearing for the conduit bond, which will actually take place on July 16th. One of the requirements for them to issue the conduit bond, because the facility is located within the city limits of Marshall, is that the city of Marshall must consent for the county to issue the conduit bonds. So simply put, we need them at the county and the county needs us. It's a really good partnership here that we're able to work together and provide UCAP with a bonding process that will mean lower interest payments for them. So what you have before you is a resolution that would specify in detail the consent to the county board for them to issue the conduit revenue obligation bonds.
Okay. Any questions for Sharon? The council recalls that several years ago, we had a similar action that facilitated the construction of the Western Mental Health Hospital, and then had the bonding was through the city of Canby.
Right, yep, yep.
Again, there's no risk, no obligation of the city other than just indicating our support for the need for this project.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve a resolution consenting to and approving the issuance of a conduit revenue obligation bond by Lyon County.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Steve, discussion. John?
Just a question I didn't get a chance to ask Dennis, being on the board, is there any conflict with me voting on this?
No.
Are there any other discussion on the motion?
The only question I have is if there's no obligation of the city to pay for this bond, to service the bond, to worry about the costs or collection of the bond, why in the world does the city have to do it? I mean, it's the same thing as the county. The county, I mean, I understand it, but it's a paperwork drill.
I don't know all the technical background on it, but my understanding from doing some reading through IRS and the requirement of this is that the buyers of the bond would not buy it unless it was issued by a governmental entity. And I'm not sure why that gives them some security there. I'm not entirely sure, but it is a IRS-regulated bond issuance. So it's not a very good explanation, but.
No, because if you follow the money, somebody's always got to be on the hook for it. And ultimately, if it's offered by the city or the county, ultimately, it would seem like the county, in this case, is going to be on the hook for it if something fails. Even though the technological and legal terms say no, so I don't know.
Right, UCAP does have the funds to pay the bonds. They have pledged notes on this, so there's financial standing for any buyer of the bond as well.
And the bonds are issued, I mean, the purchaser of the bond knows it's conduit. They just see Lyon County / City of Marshall in the chain, but they know that's conduit bonding. Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Now we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting, and the motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 13. Consider the city charges on tax forfeited property located at 620 West Main Street. Sharon, are you going to introduce this?
I could, this is a follow-up, and Annette's going to help have some discussion as well, but this is a follow-up from the May 14th, 2019 council agenda item, and the reason that staff requested some action on this is we had multiple requests for interest in purchasing this particular lot. It is a tax forfeited property that's listed with Lyon County. However, there were special assessments, and we just felt like we needed some direction from council on what should we do with these special assessments. The $9,000 that was set when the Lyon County Auditor Treasurer came, approximate $9,000 came before the council, didn't seem to be the right market price to move the lot. And so I'll have Annette kind of explain the process that we use, the interest that we did not get, and then some follow-up after that.
Thanks, Sharon. So like we kind of have a little bit of recap on the May 14th council, directed staff to send out for requests for development proposals for the tax forfeited property at 620 West Main. On May 25th, we did publish that in the newspaper requesting development proposals so we could negotiate lower assessments based on what their proposal was for development. June 4th, the deadline came and gone. We did receive one proposal. The committee met on June 18th to go over this proposal for development, and we did negotiate $3,000 for assessments, or for charges and fees. Sorry, in the county's eyes, it's kind of, they classify everything as assessments once it reaches them, so it's the fees and charges. We do have an agreement for the $3,000. They did pay $1,000 of earnest money just to show that they are serious about purchasing this property. And so now we bring this back to the council for final approval.
Any additional?
And I
You were-
just want to add that Councilmember Schaefer and Councilmember Lozinski offered some support and guidance, and there was a discussion with them too. And I don't know if Councilman Schaefer wanted to add any comments to this.
Sure, and thank you, Sharon, thanks, Annette. Yeah, so Councilmember Lozinski and I were contacted by Sharon and Annette to say that they have a purchase offer on the property. So we met last week and spent about a half an hour, 40 minutes discussing the offer and what our options are, and gave Annette some negotiating parameters that she could work within, and this is within those parameters. The one thing we wanted to make absolutely certain of is that it wasn't a ghost offer. So before we would bring it forward and even discuss any numbers, we required $1,000 earnest money, where if the buyer backed out, we keep the money. If council fails to approve this agreement, the buyer gets the money back. And so we just wanted to still leave ourselves in good negotiating standing if for some reason this fell through. So that's the reason why it's written the way it is. Jim and I agree this is a solid offer. We get the property back on the tax rolls. It benefits the city, it benefits the school district and the county. And, you know, the question came in, well, what's the buyer going to do with the property? It doesn't matter. What's the city or the county going to do with it? Absolutely nothing. If the buyer fails to take care of it, we have remedies for that also. So it's nothing but a benefit to our position, and we think that this is a solid offer. And I know that Jim and I are very much in agreement with this.
Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Russ. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. The motion passes.
Thanks, Annette, for working on that. You did an awesome job.
Move then to agenda item number 14, consider appointments to various boards and commissions. Earlier this evening, as well as in previous meeting, the council did meet in special session, and based on the consideration of applicants and interviews for various boards and commissions, I recommend that Tom Larson be appointed to a second term on the Airport Commission. That term will expire May 31st, 2022, and that Christina Carroll be appointed to the Marshall Municipal Utilities Commission for a term that will expire May 31st, 2024. I'd offer that as a recommendation and entertain a motion to affirm.
So move.
Motion by Craig.
Second.
Seconded by Russ. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. Motion passes. We do have some additional openings on boards and commissions, and welcome interested parts of the community that are interested in serving the city of Marshall on various boards and commissions. So we'll move then to commission board liaison reports. Actually, mine have not met since we last met. The Regional Development Commission annual meeting is coming up the second Thursday of July, and I believe all of the council members received information about that if you chose that. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing I'd like to bring forward, and I discussed this before the meeting this evening with Glenn Olson, our engineering department lead, and it's regarding the negotiations with Helena Chemical on the property across from the airport. And obviously, it's a project that both the city, as the owners of the municipal airport, and the FAA as our operational oversight and partner, that's part of our clear approachways. And that property, since Helena has vacated it, has become, to say the least, in substantial disrepair and what I would consider approaching dangerous blight condition. And I would hope, and I know the Airport Commission feels the same way, that we can try to hopefully use that as a motivator to Helena to make a decision on our offer on that property. If we're not able to move satisfactorily to purchase the property, some action is going to need to be taken very soon to secure what's wrong with that, to at least get the dangerous part of that building down, which would be that entire round roof building, in my opinion, and get that site back secure. I think it is getting dangerously to the point where it poses a threat to public health and welfare because the building's not secure, and there's some serious human traps out there that I think need to be addressed. So I just wanted to bring that forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
The Community Services Board did not meet, EDA met, and I'll split it with John. We re-elected officers. The people who were elected were Greg Boucher as president, Chet as vice president, Chet Lockwood, Stacy Frost as treasurer, and Carla as assistant treasurer, and Aaron Raveling as secretary. We also made our subcommittees of that, and if anybody wants to know that, I'll let people know. The other thing that went through was the EDA had money in the form of a grant for facade improvement downtown, and we did this on a trial basis, and there's been a lot of interest. And so we voted on several projects. We go through the projects. They have to meet specific criteria only for the facade to make downtown more beautiful. And the basic premise is that they have to pay 50% of the project, and the grant will pay the other 50% up to a total of $5,000 from the grant, so $10,000. And there's just a lot of interest. So there's several projects that were discussed and passed, and then there was one special consideration of, does it need to be downtown or does it need to be just a business? And that was with Southwest Tour and Travel, and there was a lot of discussion on that. And because of the longevity of Southwest Tour and Travel in the community and the business it brings to the community, that was elected to do too, so long as it's only the facade of the building. So, and then I'll defer the rest to Councilman Kramer to share the wealth.
Thank you, Steve. John?
Okay, a couple of other items on that we talked about. EDA was purchase option for 5 lots on Oslo. For to UCAP they're looking for funding to continue their affordable housing that's going on in that area, and adding on, actually they'll make 6 lots that they have kind of in reserve options on, so they can they're hoping to get another wave of funding to continue with some of the homes. As far as the utilities go, which is the other committee, in June now, they're completing their AMI or automatic meter reading installations. The testing will start on the 28th, which amounts to 35 days straight of no failures to communicate to any of the meters. So that's going to be starting in a few days then and getting going. They actually have a few meters, both electrical and water meters, yet to install that MMU crew will be installing, and those are cases where there was special consideration, either it's in a very unique area in a house as far as doing the water valve, maybe a lot of construction around it, or built into something, or cases where there's some big fences, perhaps some questionable dogs, things like that MMU would take care of, but there's not a lot of meters left to do there. The bids are out for the water treatment, water softening system at the treatment plant. Those bids are expected to be back on July 9th. Also being completed in June is the disaster recovery project with Watertown, South Dakota. So in case of a very severe event here where our data, let's say a tornado or something hits MMU, destroys some servers, it's a complete backup in Watertown, and everything is, we're ready to operate immediately afterwards with that kind of backup. The chances of Watertown and Marshall getting hit in the same storm are rather unlikely versus where we have had it, where it was in this building and MMU, which something decided to go along Saratoga, we would have been in trouble. Last item is with the Volkswagen court-ordered settlement. That's moving along well. A company has been designated to handle the Volkswagen settlements, which for Marshall means that they will be installing a electrical vehicle charging station someplace on city property. There's been some suggestions made as far as where, but it's up to that company to make the final decision. And kind of the expectation is probably in the vicinity of Tallgrass Liquors, where we've got city property, so there's Waltz charging. They can go get a pizza. They can, not so much, yeah, they can buy refreshments if they want, but they can go to Walmart, they can go get a pizza, they can do a few other things out in the area. So that's been a suggestion, but now let's wait and see what the company decides. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, John. Russ?
My boards have not met since the last meeting.
So then we'll move then to council member individual items. Craig Lassard, you're in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to thank Glenn and our building officials and Glenn himself at working on the item I brought up last meeting or 2 meetings ago with the accumulation of things in residential areas, and there's been some progress on that, and I appreciate that. And I know that the neighborhood appreciates that also. I have, the only feedback I've gotten, and I've gotten a little bit, has all been really positive. So thank you for that, and let's keep moving on it. And part of that discussion, I've had some negative feedback again from at least one rental owner wanting the city to do more in assisting our landlords with working with the tenant and taking the responsibility on ourselves as a city of clearing the garbage or taking care of that. And I explained to the individual why I didn't think that was a very good idea, but we were certainly open to suggestions about giving them tools themselves to work with if they're short of some. And I know that individual also had a discussion with Councilman Lozinski. So again, you know, as we progress, everything by steps, but I think that at least we've got some action out there, and I appreciate the work, the efforts that have taken place so far. So thank you. And I know that the attorney staff is also works on that to serve the notice. So thank you. That's all I have.
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Russ?
A couple of things. Glenn, I received another call today. I guess we have and I forgot to call Glenn, Dean, we have a pothole at the end of Columbine and Southview. Pretty good size. I've had 3 calls and wondering if the city can throw a little asphalt in that hole. So, and I apologize, I forgot to call Dean. The other one, I had a lady approach me after church on Sunday and questioning me about the speed at the aquatic center. So, and I wish Preston was here, but I drove out there today. I know we have 10-mile-an-hour limits going in and going out. She said the real need was for speed reduction or consideration, or when the kids run out of the building, they're running toward the car, and there's not. And she said people drive slow, but she said there's nothing there. There's one speed bump as you go in, going out, but she thought maybe the additional installation of another speed bump or something that might deter slowing down people.
What's the location? Sorry.
It's right in the entryway of the aquatic center of the building to go in. So, and again, I know the speed limit signs are posted there. They're 10 miles an hour. I don't think it's the road going in and out. It's directly in front of the building itself. So I told him I would bring it up at council. That's all I have.
Pothole on Columbine, is that on the Southview end or is it on the opposite end?
On the opposite end.
Yep.
Yep.
There's a little barricade there.
Yeah, and I thought about today because they're paving roads. I thought, oh, I'll run over there and get a shovel full of asphalt and throw it in there. But yeah, if Dean could do that, just, yeah. Thank you.
John?
Just one thing, and did talk with Sharon maybe a week or 2 ago on this, but I know with the new school coming in, there's going to be a study on the traffic patterns in the area. We've had some requests from people in the area. They really liked it when we had the three-way stop at Saratoga and C Street. And, but did talk to them that there would be a complete study on the traffic there, but I think that whole area, you know, it is well needed to have a good look at just how are we going to be running the traffic with the school now, added traffic, and there is just plain a lot of traffic on Saratoga normally. So
That intersection
Difficult to make
is
that-
included
And Southview.
in the study.
Yeah, but at least Southview and Saratoga, they got a four-way stop. This, you know, C Street, it makes it difficult to make a turn. So.
Okay. With that, we'll move to staff reports. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor and Council, we had a very productive meeting with the MPCA Commissioner last Friday, Assistant Commissioner for Water, Katrina Kessler, and then also the Wastewater Division Director, Aaron Luckstein, and we had a number of staff there as well, including the mayor, who initially invited the commissioner in early January. And invitation was sent out soon after the discussion about specific conductance, salty discharge. Laverne had some of those issues with True Shrimp, and we just wanted to establish some lines of communication, and so if it became an issue in Marshall, that we had some input on that. And we have commented to MPCA. They've actually opened up a comment period on specific conductance. And they have, they're moving in the direction of reducing some regulation in that particular area. So we've been really supportive of that and their work in that. But it was a really good meeting.
Can I interject and just add one thing, Sharon? I agree, it was a very productive meeting, open communication, and I would also say that it was clearly evident from the MPCA leadership of the level of respect that they have for our staff, both engineering and our wastewater superintendent. There's a high level of respect for their expertise.
So that was a really good discussion. As a kind of tied into this a little bit, we recently were notified by the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities that they will be honoring the city of Marshall with an Excellence in Teamwork Award. They have an annual conference at the end of July. And this was to recognize the city of Marshall's efforts in advocating for additional state funding for clean water infrastructure. And this really happened over a 2-year period, mostly related to the MMU water treatment plant upgrade, where there's a PSIG grant of $7 million, a point source implementation grant. It got hung up by the Environmental Trust lawsuit, which delayed the project, but just some lobbying at the state level to the legislators. I know that former council member David Sturrock and Brad Rose went in front of the legislative commissions and committees. And then also just recently this year, the mayor attended a session, which I think if I recall, it was 30 below and during the polar vortex. So it was really appreciative. So I wanted to announce that. And then just another quick item too. I didn't email the entire council. I just emailed the respective committees. We have been working quite some time on looking at a lease to own program through Enterprise Fleet Management Services. A number of cities are going in this direction. And it's been a long and lengthy process, and what it's resulted in is we're really up against a timeline that if we don't make some purchases of vehicles pretty soon, we're going to miss this window. And for example, that there's some vehicles for police department that are on rotation, and that was discussed heavily last year by the council on what that rotation would be and the number of years of service they would have. And you know, just based on some discussions that I've had with council members, I didn't feel that there was enough support this year to move forward with it, and coupled with the fact that staff need to move forward. So I'm really hoping that staff are able to obtain the quotes. We have efficient equipment review committee meetings, and shortly we'll be coming to the council with the budgeted requests for equipment. I do want to add, just speaking to the Ways and Means Chairman, Councilmember DeCramer, and the mayor, there's a desire to still look into this program. It was a direction of the council to have this discussion and see if it was viable. So it's not dead. It's just been put on ice for 2019, and hopefully we can still kind of work towards it and look at 2020. So I just wanted to update the council on that.
Thank you, Sharon. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of items on construction projects. The Merit Center project is coming along, albeit slowly because of the rainfall we've had. But the intent is to pave the additional parking area there this week. So with the hot weather, it might be coned off. There's some activities going on out there, but we don't want it to be utilized right after the paving when it's going to be 90+ degrees out there. So you'll notice that it's going to get paved this week. The storage building, we don't have plans and specs for it yet, but the contractor is planning on starting that in the next couple of weeks. The north loop of the Merit Center track is intended to be initiated the week after the 4th of July. Hopefully it won't rain too much before then. A couple of important items is that Hahn Road and Erie Road, if you know where that is, it's right over the overpass of the railroad tracks by ADM. And so that intersection will be closed tomorrow. And we want to make sure, and we've notified all the emergency services, because that's an alternate route when there's a train running through town. So that will be closed completely tomorrow. It should be open again by Friday if everything goes according to schedule. So it should be open by Friday. But that'll be closed tomorrow. Country Club Drive and South 4th Street, that is also closed. That will be closed to total utility replacement, and the intention is to have it open before school starts. So that's a fairly, extended closure for that intersection, but open prior to school. And as you know, CASA 7 with the state project at Trunk Highway 23 is also closed. We have had a little bit of confusion with semis coming up from there and trying to get over to County Road 7 and through the 23, coming up our street and running into another detour. We're going to be adding a little, changing the layout a little bit of the construction barricades, and talking to both the Ampride and the Little Dairy Queen, our favorite, to be able to get people to it. So you can get to it, but when it's not obvious, you hate to have them bypass one of those iconic restaurants in town. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Glenn. Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Helena, photographs of the deteriorated building have been provided to legal counsel for Helena. I do anticipate a quick response. I've been promised a response recently. Helena. Another one. Anyway, to add to the Legislative and Ordinance Committee lengthy agenda that's coming up here in July, I received a call from a citizen wanting to know, organic is pretty big right now, and she wants nothing to do with any chemicals being sprayed by her neighbors. Wondering if the city would require applicators to give notice to the neighborhood prior to when they spray. She said some communities do that, but it's some, individual talking to me said, I like to leave my windows open. I come home and my house smells like herbicide, pesticide, whatever. She said if I could just have a notice, I would close my windows. And then she, as a follow-up, she said, what chemicals does the city use on its city parks? Do we need to take a look at appropriate chemicals? She said, I don't want kids crawling around in Roundup if they don't need to. I mean, that's a bigger policy discussion. That just came in. I haven't had a chance to talk to engineering or any parks or anything. But
Well, actually, Dennis, I think one of the responses is that this is regulated by Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and whether or not it is a licensed pesticide that is labeled to be used by an unlicensed applicator, which some are, or if it is a product that is being used on public property, like a park, then there would need to be a commercial applicator license, which our applicators, our employees do have. So I think there's a pretty straightforward answer that this is not an issue that is regulated by the city because it is regulated.
And that was passed on to her, that there are those but I just indicated that. What is applied, I don't know, but it is regulated, Department of Agriculture, regulation matters, but that doesn't provide a satisfactory answer to somebody who's not within that regulated business, I don't think so. I have reported what was requested.
But I don't think it's an issue that needs to be added to the lengthy agenda of legislative ordinance.
Well, other than, the notice, and I have not checked it out, but she said some communities do require a 2-day notice prior to application, whether it's a granular application by Teague Lawn Service or whether it's sprayed by.
That is a notice that's required by state regulation for commercial applicators on home lots, yes.
But I think that's to the homeowner. I don't know that it goes to the neighbors, to the neighborhood. That's what she's requesting. I'm not applying it to my lawn, but when my neighbor applies it, no, that goes on after it's applied. Yeah. But she said if I had noticed ahead of time, I could close my window so I don't have that smell. That poison in my house is what it's referred to. So, yeah, and I know it's a post notice. And the notice says what the temperature was, time of application, what the wind direction was, the wind speed, all of that. But that's post notice. And she's saying, can I get a pre-notice? And I don't know if that's possible or not. That puts an additional burden on the applicator, obviously. So that was just a call that was received.
Anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay, we'll move on then to next agenda item, which is the information items, which you have, as well as the upcoming meetings. Any comments on those? Which brings us then to agenda item number 22, to consider adjourning the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Russ.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Good night, Danny.
Close the voting. The motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you.